So the next thing we want to do is we do need a start method in this. So we do void start. Void just means it doesn't return anything. It's not as important to know right now for a beginner. Void start, and then we add the brackets, and there we go. And in start, what we need to do is we need to basically add every slot to our slots. So we take slots is equal to game object, which is the main class for every game object. It's not saying this object, it's saying all objects, dot find game objects, and we want to make sure that we get the one that says game objects, because if we find game object, it'll only give us one slot. We want to find multiple. So we get game objects of type and then slot handler. And that is how we do it. There we go. So now it'll find every slot in the game, and that's that. So we want to then set each slot. Oh, sorry, I already went over this. That's what this does. It sets the slot. I do have a note down because I had to actually remember how to make this. It's simple, but I don't have a good memory, so I want to make sure I wrote it down. And basically, we have two methods we're adding to this, okay? We're adding one, we are adding the add item. So we're going to make that now, so we need public, because something else is going to use it. Public void add item. And you'll notice when I make these, you'll notice the first letter and the second letter, it's just capital. And when I make variables, it is first letter is lowercase, then it's uppercase and uppercase, and uppercase and uppercase until, and that's how these work. That's just a normal coding convention. It's what you would normally do if you're doing that. So basically all we need to do for this is we're going to we need to run through each slot, and we're going to check if it matches the ID of our item. Now this is why we need the item handler, mind you. So we're going to quickly add in something. So we're going to add in int ID. Now this is just saying that when we call for the script, so we need an ID and we also would need a int amount. When we try and use the script, so you know how we can basically go into this, and we could also tell it to go, we can't do it in this one because we don't have anything, but if we were to try and use this, we could basically call this method here. We can call add item, and what it will ask for when you call it, which I'll show later, and I'll explain this more, is it will ask for an ID and it will ask for an amount. And that's what we're going to use here because you need this. So we're going to do for, which is the standard for loop, and we're going to press tab twice. As you can see here, code snippet for for loop, which will get us started, and we just need to edit length. So what we're going to do is take the slots.length, and it's basically only going to go for as long as how many slots we have, which is why this part here was important. This part here with declaring what a slot is. So now we have for how many slots we have. We are basically going to check if the ID, if we get the slot, so slots, oh wait, that's the wrong one. If we get slots and then I dot, and then we want to check for we want to look for our ID. If slots I, which is this up here, so I is basically going to constantly change for each slot. As you can see, it basically goes through this, it sets I up and says it's at 0, and then it checks if I is greater than the slot length, which it isn't, because it's at 0, and then it adds 1 to I, and then does everything in here. So this will be slot 1 by the time it gets here. So what will happen is we will check slot 1 for if its ID is equal to ID, which our ID, if you can see, is up here. It's the thing we just entered. It's the thing it will take. And then we want to take that slot. This is saying if we did find it. If the IDs are the same, then we want to take the slot and then cur item plus plus and then end it like that. Now that would normally just add 1, but if we want to make this more customizable, we want to do plus equals amount. Now most of the time you'll find this will equal 1, because sometimes, but depending on what you want to do with this, like I said, this is expandable. You can make it so it changes the amount depending on what you're doing. Alright, so that's adding an item. Removing an item is basically the same thing, but so we're just going to copy it. And we're going to change this because it will give us an error. And we're going to change this to remove item. And it's going to take the same arguments, it wants the same things, but we're only going to change that it's going to subtract this amount. Now there's a bunch of things you could do to modify this, and I will show them towards the end, because there's some quick things you can do. But let's just get over to this, which is going to be this is going to be the script that's on each and every item you have. Now the thing with this, it's a little inefficient because you have to make sure there's an item slot for each item that exists in the game, and you have to make sure that the IDs are each separately different, and you have to modify them yourself. It's not complicated, but it's more, you have to do a bit more work yourself instead of having this computer do it itself. So the next thing we're going to do, we're going to get this done. So this is going to only hold the item of ID, so we want the ID, so it's going to be another int ID. And we're going to hold, we want to make that public, because we need to be able to edit it in our editor. We're going to take a amount to give, and if you kind of see where this is heading now, feel free to pause. If you see what I'm trying to do here, feel free to pause and try it yourself, and if it didn't work, if it does, come back and check and see what I did. Amount to add. We're going to default this, so defaulting is basically just saying this will automatically start at 1. And then we're going to add a max player distance. So public int. We're going to change this to a float because of how we're going to do it. We're not going to do this immediately, but we're going to add max, or lowercase m, max player dist, which is just short form for distance. And we're going to set that to equal to 5 automatically. Now, what we need to do is on start, what we normally do is get the inventory manager, because the one thing we do need before we start doing anything else, we need the inventory handler, not the inventory manager, different script. And we're going to call this IH. Simple, short, and now, because we have that, we do need to make a start. Start, let me put that, and I'm missing void, so it's going to give me an error. There. So we have IH, which we need to tell it what IH is, because it doesn't know where our inventory handler exists in the game, so we're going to set that to equal to GameObject.find, and then we want to find GameObject. So it's not object because we're only looking for one object this time. We want object of type inventory handler. And there we go. So now this will automatically show us where our inventory handler is. Alright, so now we want void on mouse down. Now this is a standard, it comes with Unity, you don't have to make it up. It's like start. It's something that comes with Unity automatically, and Unity just periodically calls this. But this one gets called when you press on the object the script is on. So for instance, when we press on the item, this will get activated. It will activate anything inside of it. So what we want to do is, to start, we want to take the int IH, and we want to say dot add item. And now we need to put in an ID. See, like I said, this, because we have these two here, the ID and amount, when we try and call this, so let's just try that again, dot add, it will call for an ID and an amount. So we're going to take ID as our ID, and then amount to add. And then there we go. That is all we need to do. Now you'll notice I put the max player distance, and I'm going to show you why that's useful when I show you how this game would work. As we have it currently. We need to set up a few more things before we can try out the game, because currently it will not work because we haven't set up any of the IDs. And like I said, there are multiple ways you could modify this. I highly suggest mess around with your code, figure out how you can change it to work for what you want. And as we can see, this one doesn't have one, which we're going to fix. We need slot, handler, and this one will be 1. So we have 0, 1, and we don't have any text in them, but we can change that in a second. Then we have our 2 items, which both have an item script. This one will be 0, and this one will be 1. So, and that's all we need to do. We do need to add the text so the player knows that they actually can click it, and it will add the amount. So all we have to do is take the amount, add it to the text, and then same with this one. And there we go. Save, and let's try it out. See how this works. Alright, once Unity loads, here we go. Okay, so you see we have our character. Now I'm going to suggest, before we even start doing anything else, I forgot to do this beforehand, so we're going to do it now. I'm going to add a image, a UI image. And we're going to go into 2D real quick and modify this image. I'm making a simple crosshair. We're going to shorten it. It's just so that you can know as the player where your cursor is and where you have to click on something, because it can be hard to guess and a pain in the butt to guess, and you really don't want your player to do that. So 10, and we want 10, so it's even, and then we're just going to say 0 and 0. There we go. Now we have crosshair. We're going to name it that. Crosshair, and then we're going to change this to be red. Now we know exactly where our stuff is, or our cursor, for better example there. And you can change this to whatever size you want, mind you. Whatever feels right. And we're going to go back to our floor so we can see what's going on. And I am going to lower these a little bit so that we can actually, now they're in the floor and now they're above it. There we go. Save again, and let's go. Alright, we are coming close to the end. I hope you guys stayed, because this is a tutorial, a very important tutorial. In my opinion, it's something simple that can be done quickly. So we have, when we click on that one, as you can see, it modifies it. And if you looked into the IDs, it would modify the proper one. So let's say item 1, which is, if I look at our scene view, it's the first one on this side. It is currently set to 0, which means this one here is set to 0. And that is our first slot. So as you can see, if we click on the one over here, it will modify that slot. But if you notice that we can currently click it from any position anywhere in the world. And that is an extreme problem because we don't want that. It makes it really simple to click from just anywhere, and that's just not fun. That's just a random error that Unity threw. So we're going to do, instead of just saying on mouse down, we want to take, first of all, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to get a new game object. We don't want this game object, we want game object. And we're going to say player is equal to game object dot find, and we want find object with tag, and we're going to look for the tag player. So that's what player is equal, and then we want to get the players player, and we want to find the distance. So we're going to go dist, so distance. Hold on, I'm getting a little scatterbrained here. So we want to basically make an int, no, it would be a float, sorry. Float distance, or if you want, shorten it to dist, with a T, and then equals we want to find vector3 dot distance. Now you don't have to do this, but this is just something I'm adding on to make it, better. So this requires a vector A and a vector B. Vector 3, whatever. And it returns the distance between those 2 points. So our vector 3A will be our game object. Or we don't want to use game object because then we have to do a bunch of special stuff, so we want transform dot position. And then we're going to take the player dot transform dot position. And those are our 2 points. And now we have the distance between us or the item and the player. Now what we can do is we can take if the distance, so dist, in my case, is equal to, or sorry, less than, no, that's less than or equal to max player dist, then we want to do this. Else we don't want to do anything at all. Now, I highly suggest, when I was originally doing this, I went through and commented. So we're going to quickly go, and I'm going to comment one of the scripts, and I suggest you go through and comment it yourself. Make sure you know what it does. So this is going to just, this updates the current items text. That's all this has to be. It's just a way of explaining what it is. That's all. And I suggest you do it because it makes your code more readable, and if you come back to it later, you can understand why it works. So this is just the slot ID, and we can go the current, I keep putting a J, current held items. And especially if you decide to give this to someone else, it will make it 10 times more readable, because then they will know exactly what everything in your script does. So we have amount text that stores current amount. And there you go. So I suggest you doing this for each of them, and this is be how you check your understanding. If you haven't started making this yourself, comment through everything else. I will do it, and if you want to see how I would comment it, stay tuned to the end of the video. We're almost there. I just want to show you this. So this will work. Stay tuned to the rest for the rest. And let's check this out, because it has to, of course, load. But now what should happen is we can't click on either of these objects. So let's get into the scene and move around. We can't click on either of these objects anymore because we're not close enough to them. What? Oh, wait, did I not set something? Hold on. So we got an error, which means I didn't do something properly. Ah, yes. See, here's an important part to remember. The standard FPS controller doesn't come pre-tagged. So the problem is you have to add the tag. So just quickly add that tag. Sorry, I forgot to add that. But you do have to add that, otherwise it won't be able to find the player, and thus it won't be able to find, any of the stuff we're looking for here. So let's go try this one more time, and this time we shouldn't get an error. We should simply not be able to do anything with no errors, and once we get closer, within 5 of it, see, it's adding them. And then once we get within 5, which is about here, there we go. We can add it, and once we get out of its range, we can no longer add anything to it. And that is an inventory system. This is what I call a static inventory. And that's all it is. It's fairly simple code. I'm going to go quickly comment through this all, and we will be back with the comments. Hi, I've changed my mind. I want you guys to comment it, and if you guys feel like it, you can leave it down in the description to show me what you've done. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. But since we're at the end of the video, if you liked the video, press that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get notified when my next upload and my next video is out. Don't forget, hit the like button because it shows me that you liked the video, and you know, who doesn't like liking videos? Leave a comment if you have anything you want to ask, if you have anything you want to say, but until next time, Happy New Year.